COP17 ընթառաջ ճանապարհ դեպի COP17 նախաձեռնության սահմաններում այս միջազգային կոնֆերանսն են կազմակերպել, թույլ տվեք ես անցնեմ անգլերենի, եթե ականջակալներ են պետք, ինձ եւ իմանում եք են հետևում ցեղանի վրա դրված է, լինելու են խոսնակներ, որ անգլերեն են խոսելու, եթե անգլերեն չեք իմանում, առաջարկում եմ ականջակալներից օգտվեք. Dear guests, I'm Alan Armenian. Welcome to the American University of Armenia. I'm the Kopion Center for the Environment's director. There will be some presentations in Armenian, so if you need translation, the devices, earpieces are back there, so I encourage you to take them whenever it's convenient for you. So my very warm welcome to this first of the major initiatives after the launch of the Road to COP17. Road to COP17 is an initiative that we organized in partnership with, we meaning the Kopion Center for the Environment at the UA, organized in partnership with the Ministry of Environment of Armenia, as well as the Convention on Biological Diversity Secretariat. It's an initiative that tries to prepare Armenia especially thematically on hosting COP17. Thematically, I mean, what I mean by thematically is that we're not going to get, with Road to COP17, we will not get involved in the logistics of, hotel rooms, transportation, food, that stuff there's other groups working on. We wanted to make sure that our initiative is focused on the content and what Armenia's leadership entails in hosting COP17. As you know, COP17 is the Conference of Parties, the 17th Conference of Parties of the Convention on Biological Diversity. It is one of the three main Rio conventions, along with the Climate Convention and the Anti-Desertification or Combating Desertification Convention. And for the first time, Armenia is hosting a Conference of Parties. This is a major international event that Armenia is being placed at a leadership role globally, because for the next 2 years, Armenia will take on the presidency of the convention and pushing forward the agenda. So it is critical that we as a society and kind of whole of government, whole of society, this terminology that's being often used, we adopt this as a really critical approach to preparing for COP17. We have many speakers today, international and national. Our aim has been to frame the conference around the four main goals of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And each of the goals, of course, restore and protect, share resources equitably. I can't remember all four. All four are covered with our international speakers and what we're hoping to do is connect Armenia's efforts to the global agenda. So this is an exercise in talking globally from a local perspective. Okay. So just quickly, if I could show you, I don't know if, can I have the screen switch away from? No. Okay, so I'm going to hide this. So to find out about the COP to Road 17, I encourage you to go here, and this will be continuously updated, this site. And these are the events that are taking place under COP17, Road to COP17. We have an international conference. This is today. We will be organizing a series of technical and professional workshops throughout the year. And also we will be producing this series of e-modules called Biodiversity for All for mass communication on what are the key issues and key topics that Armenian society needs to know when it comes to biodiversity and the biodiversity agenda. And some of the details are presented here. And the professional, for instance, workshops will have engagement of youth, we'll have media, engagement of media to understand what is it that it means for Armenia's media to host a convention, global convention. We'll have sessions on Nagoya Protocol. We'll have the science community understand that they're very detailed, very important, a deep research on certain species has a global agenda behind it and has a global policy framework around it. So connecting science to policy is another thing we want to highlight. And also financing and also tourism sector, people taking tours, tour operators need to know how to communicate about biodiversity topics. So the field, Armenia is a biodiversity hotspot. It's one of the 32 biodiversity hotspots. So we have a lot to understand and offer, and I'm not sure our Armenian society necessarily appreciates this. So this is the road to COP17, and last time Ms. Schumacher, the executive secretary, sent a message, welcome message to everyone. Today she's also sent a welcome message for this conference, international conference, and we'll look at that later on. So without further ado, it's my delight to invite Mr. Aram Meymaryan, Deputy Minister of Environment of the Republic of Armenia, to give his opening remarks. Thank you. Կարող ենք հետ վերադառնալ, հա, շնորհակալ։
Հարգելի Տիկին Ժակոբ, հարգելի պարոն Ամիրխանյան, շատ նախ շնորհակալ եմ, որ հյուրընկալել եք մեզ այսօր այստեղ եւ ինձ համար մեծ պատիվ է, շատ ուրախ եմ հանդես գալ այս լսարանի առջև այս շատ կարևոր կոնֆերանսին, որը նախանշում է մեր ճանապարհը դեպի COP17։ Հարգելի պարոն Պապյան, հարգանքներս ձեզ, շնորհակալ եմ, որ այսօր այստեղ եք։ Հայաստանը թևակողել է մի փուլ, երբ 2026 թվականին մենք պետք է ընդունենք կենսաբազմազանության մասին կոնվենցիայի կողմերի 17-րդ հանդիպումը։ Սա շատ կարևոր եւ պատասխանատու գործընթաց է Հայաստանի համար եւ մենք չենք ուզում լինել լոկ որպես հյուրընկալող երկիր, այլ ցանկանում ենք լինել որպես միջազգային հանրության պատասխանատու մաս, երկիր, որը շարք կանգնած մյուս երկրների կողքին պայքարում է կենսաբազմազանության կորստի, կլիմայի փոփոխության նեգատիվ հետևանքների դեմ եւ աղտոտման հետևանքների դեմ։ Սա այն 3 կրիզիսներն են, որ երկրագնդին սպառնում են եւ Հայաստանը անմասն չէ եւ ասեմ ավելին, որ լինելով ծովային երկ չունեցող երկիր, հարուստ կենսաբազմազանությունով մենք պետք է ել առավել ջանքեր գործադրենք, որպեսզի պահպանենք մեր կենսաբազմազանությունը, որը արդեն լոկ որպես բնապահպանական հարց չէ։ Դա տնտեսական հարց է, որը ուղիղ սպառնում է մեր տնտեսությանը, կենսաբազմազանության կորուստը, կլիմայի փոփոխությունը։ Դա մեր ինքնության հարց է, մեր անվտանգության հարցն է, որտեղ այն կենսաբազմազանությունը, որի մեջ մենք ձևավորվել եւ որպես երկիր կայացել ենք, դա մեր ինքնության մի մասն է։ Եվ հետեւաբար դրա կորուստը սպառնում է նաեւ մեր ինքնությանը, սպառնում է մեր անվտանգությանը, մեր առողջությանը։ Ուստի Հայաստանը մյուս երկրների կողքին կանգնած պետք է պայքարի բնապահպանական խնդիրների դեմ, որպեսզի որպես երկիր, որպես համաշխարհային ընտանիքի պատասխանատու անդամ տեղ ունենա այս երկրագնդի վրա։ Ուստի շատ շնորհակալություն այս կոնֆերանսը կազմակերպելու համար, նա մեզ համար շատ կարևոր է եւ մեր ճանապարհին մենք լիովին համահունչ ենք եւ համաձայն ենք Կումինգ Մոնրեալի կենսաբազմազանության շրջանակ գլոբալ շրջանակի հետ եւ ամեն ինչ անելու ենք, որպեսզի մեր երկրի առջև դրված թիրախներին հասնենք։ Մասնավորապես մենք ներկայումս աշխատում ենք մեր երկրի կենսաբազմազանության ռազմավարության եւ ճանապարհային քարտեզի ձևավորման շուրջ, որը շուտով պատրաստ կլինի, որը կարծում ենք պետք է համահունչ լինի նաեւ մեր երկրի ստանձնած եւ արդեն ձևավորվող NDC-ի հետ։ Այսինքն մենք պետք է կլիմայի փոփոխության դեմ պայքարը եւ կենսաբազմազանության պահպանության այդ պայքարը համահունչ տանենք առաջ եւ կարծում եմ սա Հայաստանի կարևոր ներդրումներից մեկը կլինի նաեւ COP17-ին ընթരാճ, որովհետեւ մենք կարողանանք այն սիներգիաները ընդգծել եւ մշակել եւ կազմակերպել, որ կենսաբազմազանության կորստի դեմ պայքարը եւ կլիմայի փոփոխության դեմ պայքարը պետք է ունենան։ Եվ այդտեղ խնդիրներ կարող են լինել, որոշակի հակասություններ կան, բայց մենք պետք է պայքարենք եւ առաջ գնանք այդ ճանապարհով։ Ոստի շնորհակալ եմ, որ այս հնարավորությունը ընձեռվեց եւ այս կոնֆերանսը մենք միասին կկայացնենք։ Մաղթում եմ ձեզ հաջող քննարկումներ եւ բոլորիս հաջողություն դեպի այդ ճանապարհ։
Okay, so let's now hear Ms. Astrid Schumacher. She has sent us a recorded message. So I'm going to connect. Can we have... Okay, hold on. Okay, we'll start all over again.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, warm greetings from the Secretariat of the Convention of Biological Diversity in Montreal. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to speak at the International Conference on the Global Biodiversity Agenda and Armenia's work. I would like to express my appreciation to the Government of Armenia and the Ministry of Environment, the American University of Armenia and the European Center for Environment, as well as the German Development Cooperation Agency, die Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit, GIZ, for convening this conference. Your commitment is important. The world is in a race against the clock to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. As part of the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, KMGBF, 23 important measurable action targets must be achieved by 2030. That is in 5 years from now. And next year, the UN Biodiversity Conference, COP17, will witness the first global review, or first stocktake, of progress against the KMGBF. Excellencies, distinguished guests, in a year from now, Yerevan will be the host of the 2026 UN Biodiversity Conference. And the parties will have before them important decisions that will shape the remainder of the global race to implement the KMGBF. Here in Yerevan, we will take stock of national targets and national biodiversity strategies and action plans. We will identify potential gaps in national ambition. Most importantly, we must find ways to accelerate the pace of implementation. COP17 will for sure be a moment of truth. It must also be a moment of renewed sense of urgency and commitment, uniting us all around saving biodiversity as our planet's life support system. Of course, this is a daunting endeavor, but bending the curve of biodiversity loss is possible. In the UN, we like to talk about a whole of government and whole of society approach. These are complex terms behind which is a simple truth. Everybody has a stake in nature and everybody can and must act to protect and restore it. And indeed, we see more and more of this mobilization. Businesses, bankers, farmers, fisherfolk, the list is long. Many are already examining how they can ensure that what they will do contributes to saving biodiversity rather than harm it. We are looking to the business sector in particular to move forward in assessing impacts on nature, to transparently disclose them, to adapt behaviors accordingly, and to seize the opportunities of investing in nature and becoming nature positive in their operations. Let us also not forget that we have a lot to build on. At COP17, we will hear about best practices, solutions that really work and why they work, technological advancements, partnerships, initiatives taken by cities, and so much more. And of course, science is unequivocal. Action we're not taking today, we will have to take tomorrow at a higher cost. Your beautiful country and warm hospitality will help the global community take the decisions we need. All of us in the Secretariat look forward to working with you to make COP17 a moment of recommitting, accelerating, and scaling up. Thank you so much. I wish you a productive and rewarding conference.
Thank you, Ms. Schumacher. This conference, as we have it, has a lot of international guests traveling all the way to Armenia and bringing their experience and their understanding of the biodiversity agenda to help us also connect more intensively with the global agenda. And of course, this would not have been possible without the support of the German government and the EU in making this possible. So we want to extend, I want to extend my personal, and also the center wants to extend its personal gratitude to the financial support that we received to enable bringing this group together and also enabling this conference to be as rich as it is with content. And so with this, I would like to invite from the German Ministry of Environment, Climate Action, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety, BMUKN, Ms. Elke Steinmetz to give an opening remark. Is Mr. Steinmetz here? Oh, so she'll be making an online statement, okay. So we need to, is she connecting on Zoom? IT folks, can you help? We have only two. She's connecting by Zoom, is she? We don't see any participants on Zoom right now. Maybe until we solve this problem, we go to the next speaker. So also the European Union has been part of financing this, so it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Vaclav Serba, Deputy Head of the Cooperation at the EU Delegation in Armenia. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. Americanian, dear Mr. Mermarian, the colleagues, the students, thank you very much for this opportunity. In fact, I'm glad that there are occasionally these IT hiccups because by time I was supposed to speak, I was worried that everything would have been said. Now this is the bullet for my German colleague to bite, and I can take some time very, very happily. As the European Union, we are very much supporting this event happening in Yerevan, the Conference of Parties, at the end of next year, and we are committed to support you in making it a success. Now, success in what terms? Obviously, we are looking forward to have a success for the process as such, but we would like to see this event and this process that is ahead of us this year leave some marks on the Armenian countryside as well. And we would like it to leave some marks on the Armenian government as well. Let me develop a bit on those three aspects. So first, and there Astrid Schumacher, my previous colleague from the European Commission in Brussels, she mentioned where we are. At the end of 2026, we will be just in the halftime of the process. At the end of 2022, important targets were adopted or agreed. In 2030, there will be a delivery time. So at the end of 2026, we will need to have a very good collective understanding of what strategies and policies are in place, and ideally, all strategies and policies should be in place so we can properly implement. Now, this is going to be extremely challenging, and you can imagine the big need for political leadership in this. And we are grateful to the Armenian government that you are ready to do it, that you are ready to push even EU member states to do better than they do now. Because even EU member states, even the country where I come from, Czechia, they are behind in terms of their current commitment to protect the areas. They are well below the 30% objective. So you will need to be pushing everyone together with the European Union, together with the Secretariat of the protocol, and with your international partners. So we very much hope to see at the end of 26 that there is a really good dynamic, there is a strong momentum, that the targets of 2030 are seen realistic in terms of their achievement. This is, if this happens, this is going to be a huge success. Secondly, as you well know, as the EU, under our cooperation agreement, we are supporting, our delegation is supporting important projects that preserve biodiversity in Armenia. And we are supporting alignment of Armenian policies with the EU policies on this. I very much hope that over the next year we can see another jump in ambition in this area, and we will be keen to support more activities and more projects in Armenia, so that it's not just the international process, but it's the Armenian fauna and flora that can actually feel the impact of your presidency for this important political process. And thirdly, the protection of biodiversity, it's one of the oldest EU policies. It started already at the end of the 70s with designing areas and the governance for these areas to make sure that the species there are protected. Nowadays, obviously, biodiversity policies have much bigger scope, much bigger cover. Apart from designing protected areas, like in the European Union, we have the Natura 2000 areas, we are also collectively expected and committed to mainstream biodiversity aspects in pretty much all policies that we do. So the European Union's agricultural policy has important obligations vis-à-vis biodiversity. The forest management or the urban planning, all these areas that feature in the EU policies. And we very much feel the vibe in Armenia, in the Armenian society and the government, to build stronger ties with the European Union, to build stronger partnerships, to align ever closer with the EU policies and in the coming years. And this means, with all respect, Deputy Minister, this means has been way beyond the scope of the Minister of Environment. This is an all-government approach. And this is an important policy area that can actually, help Armenian government to get close with the EU in policies and in regulation. And I understand this is one of the big political objectives of the country these days. So if this happens, if we see Armenia closer to the EU policies, to EU regulation, to the EU systems at the end of 26, as a result of this process, that will be not the least success of all the successes that I mentioned. So we have a lot of successes to work towards, and I'm very much grateful for the American University and and you personally, sir, to take the lead and engaging the society, engaging experts and students and people of Armenia in this process. Because eventually these things don't happen only in government, the things happen in society, especially when it comes to protection of environment. And I have very much a very good feeling about the dynamic that you, ladies and gentlemen, are creating for this. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We still do not have our German colleague connected. We'll try to solve this problem. Maybe there's, hopefully there's some technical problem and everything is well with her. Okay, so we're going to have a keynote speaker talking about the Nagoya Protocol, and this is the person who, and also on overall the moving from COP16 to COP17, the global shift. That person is on his way. There were some, they arrived this morning and there were some delays, but hopefully they'll make it. So I want to suggest we move on to the thematic discussions, and then once Mr. Shikongo arrives, then we will give him the chance to make his keynote speech. Before I hand over to my colleague Arsen Gasparian, who is really leading and spearheading all of our biodiversity efforts at the AUA Akopian Center, I want to express my deep gratitude to his passion and his commitment and his hard work. Gaine Buiso also has been incredibly active and supporting and carried a humongous burden in pushing this agenda forward for us to be able to organize this. Haikanush Martirosyan, also at the AUA Akopian Center, has been extremely supportive, and of course we have a whole host of volunteers from the American University students who have been also extremely supportive. Thank you to all of you. So with that, Arsen, please. Do you need this agenda? Do you need this? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alan, and to those names I would like also add the name of Diana from GIZ, who supported us with this logistics and not only. So good morning, everyone. I will be moderating the session of Protect and Restore. And as Alan already presented, the structure of this conference based on the global biodiversity goals, which we have within the Kunmin Memorial Global Biodiversity Framework. And it's for us, it's really important to start with the let's say, backbone of this framework. I think I consider this, and not only me, the target number 3, protect, about protection, and about increasing protection by 2030 of our terrestrial, marine, inland, and freshwater coastal ecosystems by 30%, because we are talking about the let's say, in situ conservation, and that's why it's let's say, we consider this as a backbone of this global biodiversity framework. And our session, Protect and Restore, will also talk about restoration. So it's my pleasure to invite our first speaker, Dr. Lawrence Jones-Walter, Head of Program Nature Inclusive Transition Corporate Strategy and Accounts, Wageningen University and Research. Dr. Lawrence will cover the topic of 30 by 30. And so please, floor is yours.
I can find it. I haven't got my glasses. Might be helpful. I don't have my reading glasses. This could take a couple of minutes. Yes, please. That's okay. He could
Just a second, I will help you. Okay. What was the name of it? Here.
Looking good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Just a second. Let's move this somewhere here. No? Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Alison. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, thank you very much for inviting me here today. It's a delight to be in Armenia. I was lucky enough to see some of Armenia yesterday and this morning driving in. And you clearly have a beautiful country. And of course it is one of the biodiversity hotspots. This talk is about one of the key targets from Kunming, Montreal, which is the 30 by 30 target, and I'll say something a bit more about that. Protecting nature, but also protecting the future, because this target is about protecting the future of the natural environment for future generations. My name is Dr. Lawrence Jones-Walters. I'm acting as Senior Biodiversity Advisor for UNEP. I'm based at Wageningen University and Research in the Netherlands. Ik ben heel blij hier te zijn vandaag. That's Dutch, by the way. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Kunming-Montreal Biodiversity Framework, the key elements of Target 3, and some of the gaps and opportunities and perhaps the way forward, perhaps picking up on what our distinguished guest from the European Commission was talking about. There are some things that can be done between now and next year, but certainly between now and the medium-term future. So just a little bit about the Kunming-Montreal framework. The outcomes were 3 goals: protect and restore, prosper with nature, share benefits fairly, and invest and collaborate. And those are the core, if you like, of the strategic process. And the mission to take urgent action to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, to put nature on a path to recovery. And let's be clear that where nature was even 10 years ago, but certainly 20, 30 years ago, is a better situation than we have now. And we have to try to move back towards that as far as possible. Within that, there were 3 groups of targets: reducing threats, meeting people's needs, tools and solutions, and I'll be talking about number 3 in reducing threats, target number 3. But you can see there are 23 targets, and those apply to every country that is signatory to this convention. And there are some cross-cutting considerations in relation to implementation and support mechanisms, monitoring, reporting and review, and the one that is hidden by the little screen in the bottom right-hand corner there. So what is the target 3? Basically, it aims to conserve at least 30% of the planet's land, inland water and coastal and marine areas by 2030. And the short version is the 30 by 30 target. That's what we generally call it. That's the long version, and it is detailed because it has to be, because it contains quite a lot of content that's important. But the important thing to understand, I think, about this is that by setting this goal to conserve 30% of the Earth by 2030, the target provides a concrete, ambitious benchmark for global action. So, also, as we heard, we have something like 4 to 5 years to get there. And that is challenging, but in some ways that's a nice challenge for us to get to grips with. This is the Sev Lake Sanctuary in Armenia, of course. And the target acknowledges, as it says here, the critical role of biodiversity in supporting human life and ecosystems. And it recognizes that the planet needs biodiversity, effective, equitable, representative conservation to prevent more extinction and ecological collapse. And don't forget that those ecosystems provide us with a range of services, We already heard about tourism from our host. One of those, that is a very important economic benefit for many countries, and it is based on biodiversity in the landscapes that countries can provide. And it becomes more and more important as we move into the future, as an example. So here are the core elements: terrestrial, inland water, coastal, marine areas. And protected areas are the core of this target. You can't quite see that. Protected and conserved areas are the core of this target. Protecting areas is proven as a tool. Basically, if we didn't have the target within Europe to protect up to 20%, it's currently 18%, but it's just around 20% now, to protect areas of land against development and other aspects or negative aspects of management and resource use, then we wouldn't have that 20%. It's essential to have that, and it's been one of the great efforts of nature conservation within Europe that we've been able to achieve that since the legislation was passed back in the 90s. And in fact, the special protection areas were originally brought forward in the late 70s, as we've already heard. These areas can deliver multiple benefits. They're central to biodiversity strategy, and they range from strict protection, which is basically no human intervention, to sustainable use areas where they are managed, for instance, for traditional agriculture. So many grasslands are managed in that way. A protected area is a geographically defined area designated or regulated and managed to achieve specific conservation objectives. That comes out of the Conservation for Biological Diversity. What you should also note is that the target includes other effective area-based conservation measures, and these are areas that achieve positive biodiversity outcomes even if they are not primarily designed as protected areas, expanding the scope of conservation efforts. I can see that my formatting is not as it should be, and that's going to be an issue when we come later on in this presentation, but I apologize for that in advance. OECMs are going to play a crucial role in achieving this target because many countries struggle to find 30% coverage. I live in a very small country, the Netherlands, and it is challenging for us to find 30% of land that we can set aside purely for nature conservation, for protected areas. And that is the case in a number of countries in Europe, but also globally. It is difficult to achieve this target. So the OECMs may play a crucial role in helping countries that don't necessarily are not able to cover the full 30% with traditionally managed protected areas. The OECMs can help with that. Again, reflecting back on Kunming, Montreal, the basic principles of the protected area network, they should be of particular importance for biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services. They should be equitably governed, which means that the people that live and work in them, because there are people that live and work in protected areas, are treated equitably, among other things, and that they're effectively conserved and managed. They are representative ecologically. They are well connected ecologically, so there are ecological networks and corridors that connect them. That they have sustainable use that's consistent with those conservation objectives, and in countries where this is an issue, that the rights of indigenous peoples and local communities are recognized and respected. I've just come back from the Amazon, working with indigenous leaders, and this is a massive issue there for them, and something that is also something that we no doubt will be discussing next year at the COP. Where are we globally in reaching target 3? 16.43% of protected areas globally. 9.61% marine, so that's terrestrial, 9.61 marine coverage. OECMs, 17.53, and on terrestrial and marine, again, 9.85. So we've got a little way to go with that target. And how do we stand in Armenia? Well, currently, protected areas are approximately 387,054 hectares, or approximately 13.1%. I think that should say square kilometers, but approximately 13.1% of the country's total territory. So you've also got a way to go, around 27% to hit the 30%. Further information is available in these links here. And there has been a new report produced last year which gives more exact figures. So where do you go from here? What things could be done between now and the COP, and certainly by 2030 when this target should be realized? Well, under the Berne Convention, the Emerald Network is one of the most important protected area networks that relates to Armenia and its neighboring countries. It's probably the most important coordinated network of protected areas within the region. And within the region, it is at various stages of progress. So let's have a look at that. This is interesting because I picked this from information up from a European Environment Agency report, and it shows that there is no overlap in this country between the currently protected areas and the candidate sites that are Emerald Network. Actually, that's not the case. There is a big overlap here, but it's just not reflected in the figures. So this is something I'm going to talk about that can be picked up here as a quick win, perhaps, is to get the figures sorted out. There's overlap. But if the current candidate sites are designated or taken forward, that would mean over 25% of the land would be designated as protected area, which brings you much closer to the 30 by 30 target. So I think this is something that's quite interesting and could be brought forward reasonably quickly. My apologies for the formatting. I guess this might be an issue going from one system to another. The second thing is that those sites have to have 100% effective conservation and management, and therefore they need management plans. So bringing forward management planning is the second step once the designation has been complete. And that's where those 7 points that I showed earlier can be integrated into the management of those sites. For the final 5%, I think it's important to explore the potential of the OECMs to help achieve the 30 by 30 target. So what do you have here in Armenia that could help move you towards that 30%? Where is that 5% of OECMs? And then a quick win, which I think is actually really necessary right now because Armenia is in the global spotlight for biodiversity with the COP coming up, is to get your figures consolidated. So if you Google protected areas in Armenia, you will get several different figures for the coverage. And that's something that needs fixing, and it's easy to do. If you look at the potential area of Emerald and the overlap with current protected areas, there is also an issue there. So as I mentioned, if you look at the figures from the European Environment Agency, there is no overlap indicated, and yet I know there is. So those are things that we need to work out. But these 4 steps, I think, are achievable and something that could be carried out between now and next year, certainly progressed. The figures first, the idea of taking forward the Emerald Network, and certainly by 2030, that could mean that Armenia is there heading towards that 30 by 30 target. And actually that would make you one of the leaders in the region because everybody is moving towards that. why don't you try to be the first? That's what I would say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for questions.
Yeah, it's time for questions. Sorry. We can take a couple of questions. We have 3-4 minutes. Do we have questions? If you have questions, you can come close to the microphones you see on the both sides and ask your question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for this very informative talk. What is an OESM? OECM?
Okay.
Examples, maybe some concrete examples of how this could be implemented.
Yeah. I think an OECM, again, it's a defined area that you can identify on a map. So from that perspective, it should be a number of hectares or square kilometers that could be then added to the 30 by 30 target. So that's the first thing, is it should be defined on a map. It should also contain biodiversity. So it may not be the prime biodiversity that you have within the core protected areas, but it could, for instance, be an arboretum, actually. So if it's, particularly if it contains native species, then an arboretum could qualify as an OECM.
A farm could...
Well, a traditionally managed farm. So if you have large areas of traditionally managed farmland that have significant biodiversity value, then potentially you could think about designating them as OECM. The value of that would also be that you could then look at targeting subsidy or support for those farmers in order that they continue with that traditional management that supports the wildlife that's associated with those areas.
In cities?
Yeah, well, potentially in cities there may be areas which have biodiversity value. And it should be said that within Europe, 35% of the Natura 2000 series are actually traditionally managed agriculture. And that is also very important outside of the member states. So that's another potential area that you might want to consider.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation. Olga Weigel is my name. I work for GIZ here in Armenia. I also have a question to the OECMs. And my question would be, are there countries in Europe that already follow this approach, that designate OECMs officially? How's the process going? Do they just need to designate it as an OECM and then it is? Or does it have to be acknowledged by the CBD or other convention? How would it maybe, if you would give a guideline to Armenia, what would you suggest?
I can certainly tell you from the experience of the Netherlands that we have, I think, something like, terrestrially, we have something like 14% Natura 2000. So that's the core protected areas for the member states of the European Union. That's only 14%. But we also have an ecological network. So a national ecological network, a NEN. And clearly the network has to be protected in order to maintain the viability of the Natura 2000 sites. And if you take the ecological network, if you take our marine sites, and you build those up, we approach something like 26%. So an obvious quick win, because it's also important for maintaining the vitality of the protected areas, is to designate an ecological network for a country. And that can be identified nowadays using satellite technology and then on-the-ground validation. And you will have large areas of forest, for instance, which may not be designated as a protected area but have a high natural component. So in answer to that previous question about what qualifies an OECM, forest area, particularly where it connects existing protected areas, alpine areas which are not designated, can all be included as part of an ecological network if you define them on the ground. So you draw lines on a map, then you can start to count their area, and you can count that towards the percentage of protected area within the country, and that you can use that in terms of the OECMs.
I don't know if you addressed. And the question of verification, the legal system that verifies this, not anything would go, I'm assuming. There's some standards of verification that this is an OEC.
Indeed, yes. I mean, the designation, for instance, of an ecological network has to be associated with some sort of identification of habitat quality, the content, if you like, what sort of habitat are we talking about here, and that should also link to the management then and the subsequent protection of those areas. And the NBSAP, actually, yes, that should address that. The NBSAP should also look at the designation of the core sites, so your Emerald network, for instance, and the continued designation of the Emerald network should also be addressed within the NBSAP. And I know that it happens to be a core of the NBSAP that is the further designation of the protected areas.
Thank you very much. Romela.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. Thierry Lucas from UNEP. Just to complement what Laurent said, that we have guidelines as well on OECM, on the designation, and the World Conservation Monitoring Center in Cambridge is in charge of doing this work with the countries worldwide. So we've worked in a number of countries. We worked in Czech Republic, for example, to help Czech Republic to design OECM. It's a new future for the countries, really. I mean, for example, in my country, in France, we have regional national parks now that are part of OECM, and then for all of that, we have online guidelines, and we will be happy to provide those to Armenia and the countries. I'm the coordinator of biodiversity for UNEP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our time is restricted. Yeah, please, the last question to Françoise, please. Roman.
Thank you. I'm Françoise from the United Nations. This is a country that, in its roadmap to peace, is about to embark in massive infrastructure development, connected infrastructure, and almost by definition, connectivity infrastructure will cut across biodiversity areas, and it is already doing that. So I think one area of focus that we will need from international good practice is how do we develop massive infrastructure without impacting negatively biodiversity. And the second area where I think there's going to be a great demand for support is if we plan to expand this biodiversity protected area 30 by 30, which is a fantastic idea. One of the first comments we get from population is, well, what's happening with our economic opportunities? And if you go to some of the current protected areas, there is a lot of violations of, and less so because now we have these eco patrols, but there is a lot of violations simply because local people need economic opportunities. And I think this is one area also, it's a second area where we will need to put a lot of attention in this ambition to do the 30 by 30. Thank you.
Absolutely. There are a number of points there. I think that the first thing I should say about the OECMs is that, yes, you need criteria to identify them, the same as you need for the core protected areas, but you also need policy to protect them. So the one thing that comes after the designation of the OECMs, or as a parallel, is that there is policy, government policy, that protects them. So signing up to the Emerald Network also means that you sign up to some sort of mechanism that's enshrined within government policy that prevents damage to those sites. If you are implementing large-scale infrastructure, international best practice would require environmental impact assessment. And that should be comprehensive in terms of social and environmental impacts of that infrastructure. If that infrastructure is funded by international organizations, it should be a requirement of those international organizations, World Bank, for instance, or others, will require environmental impact assessment is carried out. And the money should not be paid for that infrastructure unless the environmental impact is carried out. In an ideal world, that's how it should function. At country level, if you want to comply with international best standards, you should in any case be looking to implement environmental impact assessment for those works. And if you do so, then there are many ways that you can mitigate for those or compensate for the effects of the infrastructure. And the other thing, and it was in one of the earlier slides there, was that within the context of protected areas, let's see if I've got it there, is this idea of sustainable use and equitably governed. So these two points here. So protected areas should have a management plan, and part of that management plan should be working with local communities who are very often farmers, who are managing those areas, to ensure that their livelihoods are maintained in the context of those areas, but that inappropriate development is also prevented. So, but actually, in most countries, as legislation develops, planning legislation, which is required for building, for making local roads, this kind of thing, also should prevent that local damage. So as things develop, as the legislation is formed around these areas, there should also be constraints and protection against this inappropriate development. But every country in Europe, the member states of the European Union suffers from enforcement issues. So the critical thing is, if you can have the legislation, you can have very strong legislation, but if you don't enforce it, then it doesn't mean anything, ultimately. And we see in the member states that there is very often work that exceeds or steps outside of the legislation, which is not punished. Or it's punished in hindsight, and by that time the damage has been done to the sites. So we're not in a position in Europe to point at other countries and basically say, you need to do this, but we need to recognize that we all need to do this. We need to have the legislation linked to strong criteria for the designation of sites, and we need to enforce it.
Well, thank you very much. Just to sorry.
I'll use that one.
Yeah, I can use this one. Thank you very much. Just two remarks from my side. As a senior biodiversity expert for MBSAP, I would like to mention that the document addresses both legislative issues regarding the OSCMs and also the expansion and establishment questions. So it's there. This is the first. But the second, I like tricky, let's say, questions and remarks. For instance, if we refer to protected planet, if you will check right now for Armenia, you will see, I don't know, 30+% number, 38, which is not realistic. So I guess the first step, we should check with all countries if the data which is there is correct or not, because I guess we have the potential emerald sites, we have IBAs, IPAs, and so on there. So that's why it would be good, I think, step in general for a global community to check with the protected planet, because for reporting we are using this, the only actually huge resource for measuring the expansion of protected and conserved areas. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lawrence. Thank you for inspiring presentation. It raised a lot of questions. but we will have a chance to talk about them during the coffee break. But I would like to welcome our guest, Taukonjo Shikongo, the head of the Nagoya Protocol at the Secretariat of the CBD, Conventional Biological Diversity. He just arrived to Armenia. Welcome to Armenia. And thank you very much from Canada for this effort to come and to talk about the outcomes of COP16 in Cali and expectations from COP17 in Armenia. Please welcome, the floor is yours.
So we close this. Let's see. Oh no, that's okay. It's Deputy Minister here. Madam. You can approach. Let me, 1 second, let me get rid of this floater here.
Excellencies, I think the Deputy Minister is present, distinguished delegates, colleagues and friends, good morning to you all, and I will observe all protocols. I will attempt to do something that I'm not sure I've done before, which is to speak while I'm sleeping. And I hope I will make sense as I ramble on in my sleep. It's indeed for us a great honor to join you today at this important gathering as we reflect on our shared journey and look ahead to the road that leads us to COP17. And we are here not only to deliberate on the global agenda for biodiversity, the very foundation of life on Earth, but to reaffirm our collective commitment to the vision first set forth in 1992 when the world came together to adopt the CBD amongst other international multilateral environmental agreements. My offering to you this morning is to take you through briefly the Kunming-Montreal Global Policy Framework, and then look at COP16 and what has happened there, and move on to COP17, the raison d'être of why we are doing what we are doing here. Let me just see what language this laptop speaks. Or must I use the, can I use that button?
Sorry, yes, but it's tucked.
Okay, maybe it's this one.
Let's try again. Yes, here. Yeah.
Voilà. Well, the biodiversity framework gives us a, thank you for removing that part. Yes. I'll start off with the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and which gives us the global community's reflection about what they saw we should do as the world, and they gave us a vision where we live together in harmony with nature by 2050, and they gave us 23 targets for 2030. Just a reflection. When the world lived together in harmony with nature, is the world part of nature? Is the human part of nature, or is the human outside of nature? Just by the way. And this was adopted in 2022 in Montreal, and it sort of emanates out of the work that was agreed in COP10 when they have developed the Aichi biodiversity targets. And what comes forth is that this framework is everybody's responsibility. Maybe if I press enter, it will proceed. It's the arrows, but it's not moving. Good. All right. Now, if we look at that vision, it is a vision that was decided already many years ago. If we remember Brundtland report, Our Common Future, they had a vision, and this vision keeps coming up, and it is again being repeated that by 2050, biodiversity is valued, conserved, restored, and wisely used, maintaining ecosystem services, sustaining a healthy planet, and delivering benefits essential for all people across this planet. Now, to deliver that vision, there is the Convention on Biological Diversity, which emerged out of the UN Earth Conference in 1992, which has those three objectives, which most of you will be familiar with: to conserve biodiversity, sustainably use its components, and to share equitably in the benefits that arise out of the utilization of genetic resources. The bit that I saw from the previous presentation, the element of benefit sharing didn't come out that clear. And the resource user is the best manager if they benefit from it. Now, this issue or this thing called biodiversity is referring to the entire fascinating variety of life that we see around us. This morning we had breakfast. For those who had breakfast, that's from biodiversity. We're wearing clothes, part of it is from biodiversity. We're breathing oxygen, that's from biodiversity. And so we depend on biodiversity for almost everything that we do. Now, the framework has the global targets for 2020, 2030, and these targets means, therefore, that there is a global accountability and responsibility for all to work towards the achievement of these goals or targets, and they are shared, and it is to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. There is, with this vision, 3 goals, 4 goals: Goal A, Goal B, Goal C, and Goal D. I won't go into much of those goals. I think by now most of you are familiar with it. And we've got the 3 targets. I also won't go into much detail, but there are targets to reduce threats, and there are targets to meet the needs that people have, and then there are targets that brings for us the tools and solutions that we can consider. And if we look at those targets at a glance, as I've said before, targets 1 to 8 is looking at what is it that we can do collectively as a human species to address or reduce those threats to biodiversity. And targets 9 to 13 is looking at what is it that we must do to sustainably use and benefit from biodiversity, and through that meet the needs of people around the planet. And as I said before, targets 14 and 23 then looks at the tools and solutions that we can use to implement and mainstream these targets across development in our various countries. And then there is section C that is looking at the implementation. As we implement these targets, what are those considerations that we must take into account? Issues around indigenous people and local communities, the different value systems. I live as nature, I live in nature, I live with nature, or I live of nature. And each of those value systems will have an implication or impact on the way you handle nature. And then there's the concept of Mother Earth, and then most importantly, that this call can only be done if it is the whole of government and whole of society, but perhaps also a whole of multilateralism, all working together with one goal, one vision, one aim to hold, reverse, and address biodiversity, using also a human rights-based approach and taking gender into account. And of course, within this science, innovation, and ecosystem approach is very important, but also our responsibility to the generations that will come after us, because there is an old saying that the earth is not ours. It is a gift or a treasure that we hold in trust for those of our great-grandchildren that will come after us, for them to still enjoy what this planet has to offer. Of course, there is issues of access to finance, etc., that will be needed to address this. Now, we look at having given the world this framework. What does it mean? Where do we move from here? And so we look at the COP16, which was also seen as the COP de la gente, which is the COP of the people, and that can be considered truly a whole of society, whole of government, and whole of multilateralism approach. We have seen a strong focus on implementation of the NBSUPs that will give effect to this framework. We have seen 44 countries then submitting those NBSUPs. We had the open-ended forum for voluntary country review that provided insights on challenges that parties are encountering as they revise, update, and implement these NBSUPs based on the targets, national target setting, etc. We had the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework Pavilion, where it provided a collective think tank for advocacy and acceleration. And we had an unprecedented engagement across the board that included a significant number of indigenous people in local communities, women, youth, civil society, etc. Now, if we look at the results that came out of COP, what we then see there is that we have truly had a COP of the people, and it delivered on a number of issues. We saw the renewed commitment to resource mobilization, where the world community agreed that they have a target of $200 billion annually that would be achieved by 2030. And they have adopted a strategy for resource mobilization that covers this year until 2030. And it will be combining a range of mechanisms: public finance, private sector and philanthropic contributions, multilateral development banks, blended finance, and then, of course, we had seen the establishment of the permanent financial mechanism, where parties agreed to work towards establishing these permanent arrangements for financial mechanism under Article 20, 21, and 39 of the Convention. We saw that there was a monitoring framework that was finalized and endorsed in terms of its technical updates. And we see that parties have agreed to 28 headline indicators, 60 binary indicators that are mandatory for national reporting, 54 component indicators. And we've also seen that they have agreed to a reporting template that was adopted by the 7th and 8th national reports. And we are expecting those reports to come in by February 2026, and later on in 30 June 2029, respectively. We've also seen that parties agreed to an online reporting tool to facilitate standardized national reporting as parties are engaging in implementing this global biodiversity framework. And there is that planning, monitoring, and review mechanism to strengthen and to ensure transparency, accountability, and alignment with national targets and global goals. We've also seen a budget that was adopted with focused areas on ensuring adequate resources for implementation of the framework and to support the work of the Secretariat and its subsidiary bodies, without which the parties cannot really meet and do and discuss among themselves. And we've also seen that it's calling for budget transparency and emphasis being put on improving the efficiency and transparency of budget allocations and expenditure. We've seen that there were decisions taken on the digital sequence information multilateral mechanism, including its Kali Fund, where parties decided that all users of DSI under the mechanism should share benefits arising from its use in a fair and equitable manner. We have seen that it has also pointed to direct beneficiaries that will be developing countries, and at least half of the fund should support IPLCs, including women and youth, within those communities, and that a portion of the fund may support closing the gap to use and benefit from digital sequenced information on genetic resources. We have seen a program of work on Article 8J and related provisions being agreed that elevated the role of indigenous people and local communities, as was also outlined by the EPBS report that stated that areas managed by IPLCs are faring much better than areas being managed under state-protected areas. And so we have seen that COP17 adopted a new program of work, and this new program of work supports the timely, full, and effective implementation of the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And it included areas of conservation and restoration, sustainable use of biodiversity, including IPLCs, the way that they use it, and interestingly also knowledge and culture. How does culture impact on what we do? They say that culture eats strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if you do not look at the culture, maybe you may not achieve what you would like to achieve. And we've also seen a decision on the role of people of African descent, comprising collective or embodying traditional lifestyles in the International Convention of Biodiversity. And we've seen the establishment of a subsidiary body on Article 8J that will have its first meeting later this month in Panama. We have also seen enhanced process to identify the ecologically or biologically significant marine areas around the world, and through this unique process, more than 300 of the most critical and vulnerable areas of the oceans have been identified since 2011. This enhanced process will ensure that planning and management efforts can be supported by the most advanced science and knowledge available. We've also seen decisions on biodiversity and climate change that stress the importance of the CBD national focal points to engage with their counterparts in the climate conventions. We've also seen that a call for the Secretariat to strengthen parties' understanding of the interlinkages between the impacts of climate change action on biodiversity and the role of biodiversity in climate change mitigation and adaptation. There were a number of other important COP16 results, such as biodiversity and health, biotechnology, and then also invasive alien species and means of implementation. And of course, sometimes we do leave out the protocols under the convention. And so briefly, we've also seen that under the Cartagena Protocol on biosafety, there was progress made on synthetic biology, and they welcomed new additional voluntary guidance materials support case-by-case risk assessment of living modified organisms that contained engineered gene drives, which allows countries to tailor assessments to national context, considering ecological variables or that are unique to their environments. We've also seen for the first time that parties are cautioning each other for not having submitted multiple national reports, and that parties are being encouraged to seek assistance of the Compliance Committee under the Cartagena Protocol. With regard to the Nagoya Protocol on action benefit sharing, we saw the adoption of the action plan for capacity building and development that includes also awareness creation with 6 outcome areas that the parties to the protocol can consider. We also agreed on the templates for the first national reports that are due on 29th of February next year. Now, those were the outcomes under the COP16, and we now move on to looking at what lies ahead for when the parties meet or the world meet for the UN Biodiversity Conference in 2026 in Armenia. What we are expecting is that a cornerstone of success next year will be that Yerevan will be the effective conduct of the global review process, because that will be the center of it. Will be the first that we are reviewing. Have we had progress, providing a clear assessment of progress in the implementation of the framework? And this review will evaluate how the collective actions of parties and stakeholders align with the ambition of the framework. And a successful outcome, therefore, will see parties expressing strong recommitment to meeting all 2030 targets and identifying key actions for parties, IPLCs, UN bodies, other multilateral environment agreements, and cities and other actors such as the private sector. And these actions, of course, will have to inform decisions on resource mobilization, financial mechanism, synergies, and scientific and technical matters, addressing gaps highlighted in the global review. We hope to see that success for resource mobilization will be demonstrated through the adoption of criteria for the institutional structure to operate the financial mechanism, fully aligned with the roadmap established in Decision 16/34 of COP16, and that parties will provide guidance to enhance the effectiveness of global biodiversity finance, ensuring predictable, transparent, and impactful flows of resources, and that these measures will support national and international biodiversity priorities, while at the same time incentivizing increased private sector and multilateral contributions. And we also hope then that with regard to digital sequenced information, that COP17 can lead to the adoption of fair contribution rates from the private sector and a transparent allocation formula for the Kali Fund, ensuring equitable benefit sharing and support for all 3 objectives of the convention, and that the work of the steering committee of the multilateral mechanism on DSI and its Cali Fund can be endorsed, providing the private sector with clarity and confidence in its contribution. Additionally, we hope that COP17 can have agreement on the methodology for reviewing the multilateral mechanism, consideration of additional modalities that are tools for DSI transparency and accessibility, and as well as inclusion of small and medium entities in the contribution or contributor base, while that can strengthen equitable and effective implementation. On Article 8J, we hope that Yerevan can produce the adoption of the modus operandi of the subsidiary body on Article 8J, and that it can include modalities for the effective participation of IPLCs in governance structures, and that guidelines will be developed to strengthen the legal and policy framework supporting the Montreal Global Framework Targets 2 and 3. And we hope that success will also include adoption of guidelines for integrating traditional lands and resources, resource use into spatial planning and environmental impact assessment, as well as agreeing on the process for reviewing and updating the voluntary glossary of key terms and concepts within Article 8J. With regard to the marine and coastal biodiversity, we see success in this area can be indicated by the approval of the first set of new ecological or biological significant marine areas and modifications under the new ecologically or biologically significant marine areas modalities, as well as the adoption of voluntary guidelines on peer review processes for EPSA. And for biodiversity and agriculture, we hope that the conference will succeed by recognizing progress on the implementation of the Plan of Action 2020-2030 for the International Initiative for Conservation and Sustainable Use of Biodiversity. And with regard to the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, we hope that parties will adopt key operational and technical decisions reinforcing the safe use of modern biotechnology, the completion of the 5th assessment and review of the Cartagena Protocol, and the midterm review of its implementation and capacity building action plans, as well as a new program of work on risk assessment and management of living modified organisms, directly supporting the Montreal Global Framework Target 17. Finally, for the Nagoya Protocol, COP17, we hope that the success that will come out of Yerevan will be the completion of the second assessment and review of the effectiveness of the Nagoya Protocol that can provide a comprehensive stock-taking exercise that informs ambitious decisions on capacity building, awareness raising, resource mobilization and compliance, as well as progress on Article 4, Paragraph 4, that will clarify the mutual supportive implementation of the Nagoya Protocol and specialized international ABS instruments, ensuring coherence, legal clarity, and equitable benefit sharing without duplication or conflict. That's a mouthful. It's a lot of work ahead of us, and this cannot be achieved by one. There is a saying that one finger cannot remove a lice. It's got to be 2 fingers. And so therefore it calls for each and every one of us individually and collectively to take the hands and to look at this planet and to work towards the halting, reversing and addressing of biodiversity loss on this planet, so that those that will come after us can say one day, our ancestors did the right thing and they left us with something that we can celebrate. With that, I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shigongo. Do we have we can take one question, please, Irene.
Thank you so much for a very comprehensive presentation. It's very useful for us to get these technical details because the devil is in the details. So my question to you is, what are the lessons learned from Cali? What do you take away, and what would you recommend? What will be your 3 key messages to Yerevan as we're 1 year away in preparation for COP17? Thank you.
Thank you. Start with the end in mind, which means already see the outcomes of what you need and work with everybody. And the success of a COP lies not only in the substantive matters, but it also lies in the legacy that it will leave for Yerevan. There are students in the room. Some of those students will be incentivized to become biodiversity specialists. There is tourism opportunities. There is awareness creation, political commitment. And all of these can only happen if you start early and no one is left behind. Everybody across the government, across the ministries, across the various sectors, private sector, academia, joins forces to help those that are leading this process to take it forth and to plan and to plan and to prepare, so that 1 month before the event, you can look back and say, we are so ready. We can already see the success of Yerevan.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, since nothing worked in order for this conference, we're going to now go back to our representative of the German ministry that is behind a lot of the German effort on this. And let me see if I can... And by the way, Mr. Shikongo, you excelled in the ability to sleep and talk at the same time, and coherently, yes. So let me just see how this will work. Zoom.
And we promise we will have a coffee break afterwards.
Yes. Okay, Ms. Elke, I'm going to try to, Steinmetz, sorry. Okay, just go ahead, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much. And I apologize very much for flipping your agenda around again, but I'm very, very thankful that you're giving me the opportunity to talk to you, even if I'm very late in the schedule. It was due to technical problems. I'm very thankful to have the opportunity now. Actually, I can just compliment what Taekwondo said at the very end by saying start with the end in mind. I think it's a great saying, which applies very much to the milestone that we all have ahead of us in October next year. My name is Elke Steinmetz. I'm heading the Unit for International Cooperation on Biodiversity in the Ministry for the Environment of Germany, and I have the pleasure to be both responsible for the CBD and for bilateral cooperation. And this is my utmost pleasure to be in a very close collaboration with Armenian colleagues and with Armenia as such. From that point of view, I would like to give you just 3 short ideas, messages, food for thought when you go to the coffee break to think about. First of all, your excellent conference is called The Road to COP17. Actually, this road has started with a hammer falling in Rome. The road started there officially, but it started before, of course, in Cali, with the application of Armenia for hosting COP17, and we were very, very happy to support Armenia from the very first moment. As also my previous speaker, who was the only one I heard, and I apologize, so maybe you will hear something double, but I hope you feel that redundant is relevant. So I heard also before my colleague Joe saying that the road is the best if it's inclusive. And this is something that I realized from the very beginning, that you as my Armenian colleague, together with the CBD Secretariat, started a very inclusive process to prepare not only for the COP itself, but also for your presidency. I think this is really crucial for a successful process to make it a participative and inclusive process. And the fact that this very conference is taking place in the rooms and is being organized by the university shows that science is very high on your agenda. And I think this is also part of an inclusive process to include science. Secondly, as also my previous speaker talked about, COP17 will mark a milestone. We will have the opportunity to look back and to look forward. It's the moment to take stock of our progress on implementing the Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and this will be the crucial moment that unites us as community, but also us as negotiators. We will have the challenge to negotiate an outcome that will lead up to a full implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework. And it's a big responsibility that is in our hands. And I'm very happy to see that you as Armenia are very aware of this big responsibility, and that you're supporting us as negotiators from all CPD parties from all over the world in this difficult and challenging endeavor. Thirdly, and finally, I'd like to just mention from my point of view as a bilateral partner of Armenia, we have been in a very strong and constructive and continuous collaboration since many years, as do many other international donor countries do. And I must say I'm really happy that this bilateral cooperation now is also getting into another phase, into another level. I had the pleasure of being in Yerevan and in your country just 3 weeks ago, and I was really impressed. I knew that this country is small in size before I arrived, but I didn't know that it's so big in ideas and potential. So I'm really, really happy to be also supporting you from our end to create, as many people say, a legacy for the country deriving from COP17 and your COP17 presidency. I think there are a lot of ideas in our bilateral support that can be developed further, and I think the opportunity is there to give nature conservation in all its aspects a new push in Armenia and in the South Caucasus. So I'm really happy to see that, and as I said, small in size but big in potential. This is my the impression that I had in mind when I returned. With that, I'd like to close, and again, thank you very much for letting me talk to you, even if it flipped around your schedule of the agenda of the meeting. And I'm sorry to not be with you in Yerevan, but from here, from Bonn, I'm sending my warmest greetings, and I wish you all the success for this important conference and meeting today, and I wish you good results. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Steinmetz. Okay, so we are going to go have coffee. Maybe you want to also have coffee in Germany. I don't know. Okay, thank you very much.
A couple of
Bye-bye.
announcements. For a coffee break, we will have the maximum 30 minutes. We are around out of time, so please come after 30 minutes back. This is the first. Our volunteers will guide you to the locations. We have 3 locations for coffee breaks. So please follow our volunteers. Thank you very much. Looking forward to see you in 30 minutes.